The Gallipoli barked hard to port, her starboard shield flaring with blinding white light as the kinetic antimatter rounds slammed into her. She continued to spray mines into the path of the oncoming mass-driven rock. Harris felt the ship begin to rotate along her axis as the bridge crew attempted to spread the damage across multiple shields, desperately trying to prevent burnout. Up ahead, the Agincourt was firing broadside after broadside at the enemy ship, attempting to draw its fire, her heavy plasma cannon glowing white-hot with continuous use. She was dumping so much heat, it was a wonder she was able to keep firing at all. Harris knew that, just like the Gallipoli, all her battle overrides would be enabled so her weapons would keep firing until they melted the barrels if need be. With the mines deployed, the Gallipoli's engines went full ahead, running for the cover of the larger ship's shields to recharge. Behind her, the wreck of the Lisbon erupted in nuclear fire as her reactor finally went critical. Harris's display flared white as the EMP from the explosion temporarily blinded her senses. Over the command open link, he heard the engine corps order them to withdraw back to the fleet. If they were blind, the enemy would be too, and their job here was done. Now it was a matter of surviving until the next rock came. They still had half a load of mines, so he fully expected to be in the exact same situation in less than 30 minutes. Both ships came about and fled at full power, straight through the rapidly expanding cloud of superheated gas that used to be the heavy cruiser Lisbon, using it as cover for their retreat, running for the relative safety of the fleet's guns with everything they had. The enemy was moving to pursue, obviously unaware of the mines when the rock slammed into one. Travelling at a significant portion of the speed of light, the energy release from the resulting explosion was outstanding. The Gallipoli shuddered and bucked as her entire hull rang like a bell. Her aft shields withered to almost nothing as she took the shockwave. But distance, shields, and the law of inverse squares had saved them. This time. The sensors cleared, and Harris could see the Agincourt was still with them. One of her main engines was down, but she was not out. Of the enemy there was no sign. Harris dared to hope. "Splash one dreadnought," Harris heard the ops officer say somewhere behind him. Cheers erupted all around, and he joined in shamelessly, all his fear and anger flooding from him in that bestial roar. Over the open link he heard the other crews in the fleet also cheering before officers reasserted themselves, and the fleet readied itself for the next rock, the next round of conflict. They didn't know how many of the foe they faced. They had some kind of stealth tech that was confounding the electronic warfare specialists, until some genius realized the stealth they were using took a little time to adapt to their scans, roughly 2 nanoseconds. This was enough to give them a fighting chance, and Admiral Roach had deployed the fleet in a cross formation. The EW ships, clustered at the points of the cross, were varying their scan parameters as quickly as possible. While still useless at long range, at medium and close range they could see the enemy. It was enough, or so they hoped. A hand placed on his shoulder. "Suit up, Harris. You're being transferred over to the Agincourt." The ops officer's voice said behind him, "I'm sorry. It looks like the Roan sensor tech didn't make it. They have a lot of casualties over there, so take everything you think you will need and get down to the hangar in 30 minutes. It looks like the Delaware, Providence, and Coventry are taking the next rock." Harris felt the weight of the universe come crashing down on him. The tech in the Agincourt was Alan Job. He knew the man personally, and his family. "What about the Gallipoli? Aren't I needed here?" he had asked, trying to mask the flood of crushing emotion that surged through him. The hand squeezed his shoulder reassuringly. "Yes, you are needed here, but they need you more. Their junior tech has no experience with those Mark 18s the Agincourt carries. You do. So we're going to swap you two around while we have the chance. Don't worry. When this is over, you are coming back. Now go. I'll man your position until she gets here." "Aye, aye, sir." He managed to get out, as he unclipped the seat harness and moved aside to allow the ops officer to take the seat. 20 minutes later, he stood with 2 other transfers and his kit bag in the shuttle transfer lock. The Agincourt shuttle was just coming in through the shuttle bay doors when he felt the ship begin to vibrate as it launched multiple fighter drones. It was game on again, he thought darkly. The shuttle docked quickly with the transfer lock, and a second or two later, he saw the lock begin to cycle. They were not hanging around, that was for certain. As the inner door opened, 3 suited figures emerged. He read off the names on their suits, wondering which one was his replacement. Jackson, Haran, and Price. No pleasantries were exchanged. They just vanished quickly into the ship, as he and his 2 crewmates hurriedly climbed into the shuttle, strapping down. The shuttle cabin crew had barely sealed the door when he felt the shuttle unclamp and began backing out of the bay. Up ahead, the pilots talked quickly to flight traffic control as the Gallipoli's bay door slid into view, sealing up the moor they had just occupied. As the shuttle flipped over to face space, he could see the ships of the fleet were all beginning to fire, missiles streaked out, and as he followed their flight with his eyes, he could see the distant points of light flashing, indicating the Delaware, Providence, and Coventry were in the thick of it, fighting for their lives so far away. Damn the thought. If the fleet was engaging, it meant the mines had failed, and those missiles were meant to take out the rock, or our own ships if they were being boarded. He didn't want to think about that. As they approached the Agincourt, he could see the shuttle bay doors were already open, waiting to receive them, and the repair ship Forgehammer clamped to her rear, the damaged engine already removed. Tiny points of welding torchlight flickered all over the engine as the Forgehammer's engineer swarmed over it. The sight was awe-inspiring. Once on board, he ran to the ops room. On entry, the ops officer looked up from the plotting table that dominated the center of the floor. He was talking into his headset and just pointed to the sensor position. Harris nodded and dashed to his post. A repair tech was just tightening the screws of the replacement screen as he moved to sit. That's when he realized the seat was still slick with blood. No time to think about that now, though. Slipping into his seat, he donned the headset and activated the display. He saw immediately that the rock was gone, and so were the commentary in Delaware. Providence was limping back, and the fleet was lobbing a fusillade of fire at the pursuing monster that sought her doom. Things were getting desperate. 2 wings of fighter drones went after it, pumping round after round of plasma fire into the alien ship, as his own close-in weapon systems lashed out at them. He felt the ship shudder, and reasoned the Forgehammer was probably unclamping, her work on the damaged engine complete. The Providence was going to make it. He could feel the ship vibrating constantly now, as the Agincourt's plasma cannons opened up again, the Providence getting under the cover of the fleet's heavy guns. The alien broke off the pursuit and retreated, probably to escort the next rock when it came. This attrition rate couldn't go on. When he first set foot in the Agincourt, they had 33 ships in the fleet from the original 75. Now, hours later, they were down to 20. It felt like things were becoming more and more desperate with each passing minute. They had abandoned the intercepts with mines on the incoming rocks. The losses were simply too high. Now, like medieval defenders of an ancient castle, they are being forced to abandon the outer walls and focus on defending the keep. The planet, Sheranne, hard like the Jollet was, a pristine garden world, defended by desperate, exhausted men and women of the fleet. Harris was beyond tired. He knew it was starting to affect his perception. In the corners of his vision, he started to see wisps of smoke that were not there when he turned to look directly. He knew he was feeling the start of sleep-deprived hallucination. They probably all were. No one backed down. No one gave in. No one wanted the shame of being the first to crack under the pressure. And then the call came. "How do you hear there?" "Admiral Roach speaking. The last transports have lifted off from Sheranne Prime. The fleet is going to fall back and provide direct cover. We can't save the planet, but we will hold them off until the transports get to the lunar land range. We estimate this will take 45 minutes. I want each ship to pair up and pick a transport. If they make it to the land range, you are to circle back to the last transport and stay on the line." There was a pause. Harris looked around. Everyone was sitting upright as their commander spoke. "I want you all to know how proud of you I am. You are the finest the Navy has to offer. Now!" His voice rising, becoming more confident. Stronger, he continued. "We are on the last stages of this thing. I know you have given me 100%, and I now demand you to give me 100 more. We will not fail in our task. We will stand. Shouting now, are we lions?" The entire room erupted. Cheers, shouts of lions. Harris realized he was standing, punching his fist into the air. "Lions!" he roared. And just like that, everyone turned to their work. The voices he heard over the comms energized, confident, their commander's words filling their hearts. The Agincourt paired with the Gallipoli, and in short order were flanking a transport. The foe had a clear shot of the planet now, and they took it. Mass-driven rocks began to bombard the planet freely. Harris couldn't see it directly, but he knew he didn't want to, so he focused exclusively on the screen before him. Up ahead, at the front of the line, the first transport made it to the lang range. Her jump engines were just waiting for the gravity gradient to fall off, and she winked out of existence. He noted with satisfaction as the escort ships, the Leningrad and Rotherham, broke away, arcing back to join the Plymouth and Los Angeles to the rear of them. He glanced up. The time on target counter ticked down. Another transport flickered and was gone. "Contact!" someone shouted. It dawned on him the voice was his own. Multiple enemy contacts inbound, bearing 090 positive, 25, speed fast, strength 3, Zulu Zulu 1. His voice rising uncontrollably at the end. This is it, he thought. "Missiles away!" The ops officer's voice came behind him somewhere. "All batteries engage. Target designate 2121. Fire!" The ship's fire control had already designated 2121 through 2123 to the hostiles, and Harris watched as the missiles swarmed out to intercept. The heavy plasma cannons of the fleet were firing continuously. Another transport flicked into jump space, then another. The hostiles spread out, covering each other with anti-missile fire. 2 were coming in fast, but the last began to slow. It was going to be one of those fights, huh? Well, bring it, he thought. Another transport vanished. 2 left. Theirs, and the one behind. 2 of the enemy flashed past, clearly not intending to stop, but just drawing all the fire they could as the last decelerated under insane G. The Los Angeles exploded into a super white fireball, followed by the Plymouth, Providence, and St. Helena. All ships, target 2123. Repeat, target 2123. But it was just a second too late. The third craft fired into the engines of the final transport. She rolled, then began to tumble in space. Their own transport signaled it was about to jump, and the engine core flipped over on her axis. It looked like the enemy ship was closing in for the kill, when there was a shout over the open comms. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfuckers! And the Gallipoli shot forward towards the foe, plasma cannons firing repeatedly. It took a second to register what he was looking at, but the forge hammer was right behind her, the nose of the ship glowing red with the heat of the Gallipoli's exhaust. As they neared the stricken transport, the forge hammer flipped over and went to full power, her own exhaust throwing the Gallipoli forward like a huge hand pushing from behind. She arced round and slammed onto the top of the transport, clamping on immediately. All units defend the forge hammer! Defend the forge hammer! Admiral Rose shouted over the command open link. The enemy loomed, huge, and was right behind, when the Gallipoli did the most audacious thing any of them had ever seen. She went in with harpoons. Bows struck the forward plating of the enemy ship, cable snapping tight as the Gallipoli sped around it in an arc. The woven nanowire cables sliced through weapon and sensor clusters on the monstrous vessel as it reared up like a bear being attacked by a wasp. It was incredible. Gallipoli then fired her spinal mount, a fusion lance, carving a rent of molten metal across the back of the alien ship. The lance sliced through the cables and, with her anchorage gone, she whipped off uncontrollably into the distance. Harris stared at his screen, mouth agape, not even registering the forge hammer as it sped past. Jump engines spooling up as it barreled by with its precious cargo into the lang range. Then it was gone. That's the last of them. All ships general retreat, Admiral Roach ordered. The warships started to wink out, one by one, and Harris stared horrified at the Gallipoli as it tumbled away into the darkness until the Agincourt jumped. They emerged into real space near Sector Base Oasis. It was bittersweet. They had made it, done the impossible against impossible odds, but that final act, the sheer balls of the Gallipolis and Forgeham's crews, this would be marked down in history as a selfless act of bravery unlike any other. All the surviving warships were there, all 7 of them, and every single transport. They had done it. In an almost somber fashion they formed up, and began the transit to Oasis. Harris sat, his head stayed, filtering between elation and guilt at leaving the Gallipoli behind. He leaned forward, head in his hands, elbows on the console. He could feel hysteria growing inside his mind, a madness he wanted to succumb to, but he would not allow it. As it slowly sank into everyone's perception, they had made it, but there were no shouts of victory, no cries or whoops, just exhaustion. They had made it. His headset beeped in his ear. He glanced up, seeing the display, and immediately thumbed the fleet-wide communications. Flash, flash, flash! Emergency contact bearing 180 positive, 000 speed slow, strength 1, Zulu, Zulu 1, he shouted. The ops room exploded into action. Operators snapped back into war mode, and intership comms flashed to life once more. The aliens had followed them. He heard the targeting orders, felt the Agincourt begin to swing around when, check fire, check fire, check fire, weapons tight, repeat, weapons tight, Admiral Roach hollered over the command link. For the love of God, it's the Gallipoli, someone shouted. Harris looked at his display. Sure enough, the new content was IFFPing the Gallipoli's codes. The speaker above his station cracked to life. All units, this is Warship Gallipoli. Does anyone have any spare harpoons? We left ours back on Sheranne. The ops room exploded into uncontrolled cheers.